Hello everyone, my name is Aliah Nabilah Binti Hussain, ID number IDI 1905051 and from class DC6D. So today, for my commentary video, the subject I chose and who have committed some deviant behavior is Ted Bundy. And I will be explaining his deviant behavior based on 7 social processes that graze the slippery slope of evil by Philip Zimbardo. So, let's start with the definition of social deviance. Social deviance is a term used in sociology to describe an action or behavior that violates social norm, including both formally enacted rules such as crime and informal violations. For instance, rejecting fault ways or mores. Although deviance has a negative connotation, breaking social norms is not always a negative action. In some cases, positive deviation is possible. Even when a norm is broken, a behavior can be categorized as positive or acceptable. So, let's move on to the first process of 7 social process by Philip Zimbardo, which is mindlessly taking small steps. Okay, so Ted Bundy, he claimed to have had a normal childhood. This claim was frequently backed up by his friends and family. However, a closer examination reveals that he was a socially awkward child, despite the fact that the suspicious behavior displayed by a young Bundy has been seen in others who did not go on to rape and murder a large number of people. His childhood provides some insight into how he became a serial killer. He had classic signs of conduct disorder as a child. There is one instance where a family member, which is a female, she woke up and Bundy had arranged kitchen knives all around her body. He also looked at violent pornography at a young age and read detective magazines voraciously. There's a large body law of enforcement that believes he killed a neighborhood girl when he was still a younger man, which is a teenager. In 1968, when he was like around 20 years old, Bundy got involved with Arthur Fletcher's campaign. Arthur Fletcher, who was running to be Lieutenant Governor of Washington State, lost the election, and Bundy went to Philadelphia to get a law degree at Temple University. He soon dropped out of college. All these failures left him very upset, lonely, and again looking for an identity. When he saw his first 2 victims, which are Susan Davis and Elizabeth Perry, on the beach during the Memorial Day weekend in 1969, he had an overwhelming urge to rape them. Once he did, he felt that he had no choice but to silence them. So basically, he doesn't want anyone to know that he raped them. So this was the big turning point in his life. Once Bundy killed them, there was no way of going back to the person that he was before. So, by Christmas 1973, Bundy was a pretty strong psychopath. He had the habit of pornography, he had the habit of window peeping, and he was into a lot of sexual fantasy. But now he had homicide fantasy too. Within a few days in 1974, he attempted to kill a woman in her apartment, but she lived. He soon began killing other women. At that point, he was a complete psychopath. Next is the second process, which is the dehumanization of others. Ted Bundy thought of women as sex object, which means that being sexually attractive or desirable to them. He preyed on young and attractive college women, beginning in Washington, then moving east to Utah, Colorado, and finally Florida. Bundy would use a ruse to prey on these women, like often wearing a sling on his arm or a fake cast on his legs, or walking on crutches. He would then use his charm and pretend disability to persuade his victims to assist him in carrying books or unloading items from his vehicle. He was also known for impersonating authority figures such as cops and firefighters in order to gain the trust of his victims before attacking. Bundy used this method to rape and murder a large number of women. He usually strangled or stabbed his victims, then tortured their bodies after they died. He then extended the events by returning to the dump sites to visit the corpses or even taking them home for more sexual pleasure. He even displayed their decapitated heads in his apartment, in some cases, and slept with their corpses until putrefaction made it unbearable. So the third process is the individuation of self, which is known as anonymity. Based on researches that I've made during his murder spree, Ted Bundy used many aliases, including Chris Hagen, Kenneth Misner, Officer Rosland, Richard Burton, and Rolf Miller. I believe that he has more victims when he used all these names to commit his unacceptable behavior, which explains that he has been going on using the authorities' position, such as police, right? Okay, so moving on to the fourth process, which is diffusion of personal responsibility. Ted managed to do all his crimes alone. He did not receive any help from anyone, including his family or friends. As what I stated, Bundy was a socially awkward child, so I believe it must be tough for him to contact with his friends to give him a hand to fulfill his desire to rape and kill his victims. So the last process, which is passive tolerance. An accomplice that was involved in Bundy's crimes was his former girlfriend, Elizabeth Klopfer. After news reports of the murders and rapes of 2 women in the city appeared in 1974, things began to get weird. The name Ted was being reported by witnesses, and as well as a Volkswagen like the one Bundy drove. Klopfer was suspicious, but she was hesitant to believe Bundy was a murderer. When she confronted him about some odd habits, such as finding a meat cleaver on his desk, a surgical clove in his coat pocket, or driving hundreds of miles to Colorado one night just to distress from work, he used his intellect and charm to get out of it. She eventually made the tough decision and go to the police and betray the man that she loved. But the police didn't believe Bundy was the murderer, so she stayed with him and never told him that she had reported him to the police. This shows that Elizabeth Klopfer knew that what Bundy did was wrong, but she remained silent, although the police did not believe her report on Bundy. Another individual who had named Bundy as a suspect was Anne Rule, a former police officer who went on to become a well-known true crime author while working at the Seattle Crisis Clinic. Rule met and be friends with Bundy. Under contract to write a book about the missing women, Rule went on to write The Stranger Beside Me. It's about the Ted Bundy case, and she did not understand that at that time that her friend Ted was involved. Okay. So, last but not least, I'm going to suggest ways to prevent deviant behavior to occur. Based on Ted Bundy's story, his childhood was the starting point for his violent action towards women. I would suggest that every parent need to have strict supervision over their children, which to avoid from them discovering inappropriate stuff or pictures and videos that might affect the way they are thinking or influence them in trying to act recklessly. Lastly, parents should try to detect symptoms of mental issues among their children. Having unhealthy mental might lead to children doing unusual activity, especially deviant behavior. In conclusion, parents' roles are important in preparing good mental health among their children. And that is all from me. Thank you.